Queen Zara stood before the massive viewing window of her palace throne room, watching the twin suns of Helix Prime cast long shadows across the capital city below. The sight should have filled her with pride. 12 star systems bowed to her will. 7 different alien species called her their ruler. Her empire stretched across more space than any single leader had ever controlled in known galactic history. Yet today, like so many recent days, all she felt was the weight of keeping it all together. "Your Majesty," came the voice of General Cax from behind her. The reptilian saw its scales clicked against his ceremonial armor as he approached. "The morning reports have arrived." Zara turned slowly, her flowing purple robes catching the light from the suns. Her own species, the Zalari, were known for their tall, elegant frames and silver skin that seemed to shimmer with inner light. It was an appearance that commanded respect across the galaxy, and she had learned long ago to use every advantage she possessed. "Tell me, General," she said, settling into her crystal throne. The seat was carved from a single massive gem found in the Vec colonies, a reminder to all who served her of the Empire's vast reach. Cax consulted his data tablet, his yellow eyes scanning the information. "The situation in the outer colonies grows worse, Your Majesty. The Vec crystal miners have destroyed 3 more processing facilities on Kepler-7. They claim our taxation methods violate their sacred connection to the stones." "Sacred connection," Zara repeated, her voice flat. "They are miners. They dig rocks from the ground. Where is the sacred connection in that? The Vec are a spiritual people, Your Majesty. They believe each crystal holds the memory of their ancestors. When we force them to meet quotas, they say we are asking them to wound their family spirits." Zara waved her hand dismissively. "Superstition. What else? The NRIM trade delegations have refused our tribute demands again. They claim the amounts we request would leave their underwater cities without enough resources for their spawning season." This news made Zara lean forward in her throne. The aquatic NRIM controlled 3 water-rich worlds that were essential for the Empire's agricultural needs. Without their cooperation, food shortages could spread across multiple systems. "They agreed to those tribute amounts in the Coral Treaty of 2387, she said. "A treaty they signed willingly." "Yes, Your Majesty, but they now say circumstances have changed. Their population has grown beyond what the treaty anticipated. They request a renegotiation." "There will be no renegotiation. Send Admiral Thorax with a fleet to the NRIM homeworld. Sometimes a show of force helps clarify treaty obligations." General Cax hesitated, his scales shifting to a darker shade that indicated discomfort. "Your Majesty, Admiral Thorax's last mission to the Vec colonies resulted in 3 destroyed ships. The rebels there have somehow acquired new weapon technology." "How is that possible?" "We control all the major weapons manufacturers in this sector. That is what concerns our intelligence division, Your Majesty. The rebels appear to be sharing resources and information in ways they never have before. The Vec, the NRIM, even some of the Goral bird people from the eastern systems. They are coordinating their resistance." Zara stood up abruptly, her silver skin darkening with anger. In 300 years of rule, she had never faced organized rebellion from multiple species at once. Her strategy had always been to keep the different alien races separate, dealing with each group's problems individually. United, they might actually pose a threat to her power. "This is unacceptable," she said. "Double the security around the palace. I want to know how these species are communicating with each other across such distances." "Already done, Your Majesty. However, there is one more item in the morning reports." "What is it?" "The human prisoner from Kilos has requested an audience with you." Zara paused. Humans were still relatively new to galactic politics. Their small collection of worlds had only made contact with the greater galaxy 50 years ago. Most galactic leaders considered them insignificant, a minor species with no special abilities or resources worth mentioning. "A human wants to speak with me." What could a human possibly have to say that would interest an empress? I asked the same question, Your Majesty. The prisoner claims he has information about the rebel coordination problem. He says he can help you understand why your empire is facing these new challenges. Bring him to me. But maintain full security protocols. Search him thoroughly. An hour later, Zara sat in her throne room as the human was escorted in by 4 guards. She had seen images of humans before, but never one in person. They were shorter than most galactic species, with strange pale skin and thick hair covering their heads. This particular human appeared to be male, wearing simple gray clothing provided by the prison system. What surprised her most were his eyes. Most species looked at her with fear, anger, or calculated respect when brought before her throne. This human looked at her with something she rarely encountered, curiosity. Your Majesty, the human said, bowing slightly. His voice was calm and respectful. Thank you for agreeing to see me. My name is Tom. Speak quickly, human. My time is valuable. You claim to have information about the rebel activities in my empire. Tom straightened up and looked around the throne room, taking in the elaborate decorations, the guard positions, and the architectural details. Your empire is impressive, Your Majesty. 12 star systems under one rule. That requires incredible organizational skill. Flattery will not extend this audience, human. It's not flattery, Your Majesty. It's observation. I've been studying your empire for the 6 weeks I've been here. Not just the political structure, but the people who make it work. And what have you observed? You have 7 different species working in this palace alone. Saurid guards, Vec crystal technicians, Nrim environmental specialists, Goral messengers, Zalari administrators, Bex construction workers, and Thul food preparers. Each group has completely different biology, psychology, and cultural backgrounds. Yet somehow you've managed to get them all to work in the same building. Zara was intrigued despite herself. Most people who analyzed her empire focused on military strength or economic systems. This human was looking at something else entirely. That is simple organization, human. Clear hierarchies and defined roles. With respect, Your Majesty, I don't think it's that simple. I've spent these 6 weeks talking to your staff. Not interrogating them or gathering intelligence. Just talking. Learning about their home worlds, their families, their traditions. Do you know what I discovered? Tell me. Every single species in your empire has the same basic needs. They want their families to be safe. They want their work to have meaning. They want to be respected by their communities. They want their children to have better lives than they do. Zara frowned. Of course they do. All thinking beings want these things. Yes, but here's what's interesting. Each species thinks they are the only ones who feel this way. The Vec crystal workers believe only their people truly understand family loyalty. The Nrim think only aquatic species can comprehend community cooperation. The Saurid guards assume only reptilian species value honor and duty. Your point, human. My point is that your subjects don't really know each other. They work in the same palace, on the same projects, toward the same goals, but they've never learned that they actually want the same things. They see differences instead of similarities. Zara considered this. Even if that were true, what does it matter? They obey my orders. That is sufficient. Tom was quiet for a moment, and she noticed he was studying her face carefully. Your Majesty, may I ask you something personal? You may ask. I may not answer. When you were young, before you became queen, what did you want most in the world? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her anything like that in decades. I wanted to prove that I was worthy of ruling my people. I wanted to show that a Zalari could lead not just one species, but many. You wanted respect and recognition for your abilities. Yes. You wanted your life to have meaning and purpose. Of course. You wanted to build something that would last, something your descendants could be proud of. Zara realized where he was leading her. You are suggesting that I want the same things as my subjects. I'm suggesting that understanding what people really want is the key to understanding why they rebel. Explain. Tom took a deep breath. The Vec rebels aren't destroying your processing facilities because they hate you personally, Your Majesty. They're doing it because they feel like their spiritual beliefs are being ignored and disrespected. In their culture, taking too many crystals too fast is like asking them to hurt their own ancestors. They're not rebelling against taxation. They're defending their families. Zara had never thought about the Vec rebellion in those terms before. Continue. The Nrim aren't refusing tribute because they want to steal from your empire. They're trying to protect their spawning grounds because that's how they ensure their children survive. In aquatic cultures, nothing is more important than reproductive success. They see your tribute demands as a threat to their future generations. And you believe this explains the coordination between rebel groups? I think someone or something has helped them realize they're all fighting for the same basic reasons. Family protection, cultural respect, community survival. Once they understood that, cooperation became natural instead of impossible. Zara stood up and walked to her viewing window again. The conversation was making her think about her empire in ways she never had before. She had always focused on control and obedience, but this human was talking about motivation and understanding. Human, she said without turning around, these observations are interesting, but they do not solve my problems. Even if you are correct about rebel motivations, I still need compliance. I still need order. I cannot run an empire by asking each species what they prefer to do. I understand, Your Majesty. But what if there was a way to get compliance and order while also giving your subjects what they actually need? You think such a thing is possible? I think it might be the only way to save your empire. Zara turned to face him again. Explain that statement. Your Majesty, you rule through fear and separation. Each species obeys because they're afraid of punishment and because they don't trust the other species enough to unite against you. But what I've observed over the past 6 weeks suggests that strategy is breaking down. How so? Fear only works when people believe resistance is hopeless. But if multiple species are coordinating their rebellions, it means they're no longer afraid enough to stay isolated. And separation only works when different groups can't communicate effectively. But somehow they've found ways to share information and resources across species barriers. Zara felt a chill run through her silver skin. You are suggesting that my empire is failing. I'm suggesting that your empire is changing whether you want it to or not. The question is whether you want to guide that change or let it happen without you. Before Zara could respond, General Cax burst into the throne room. His scales were bright orange, indicating extreme agitation. Your Majesty, urgent news from the outer colonies. What is it, General? The Vec rebels on Kepler 7 have made contact with the Nrim resistance cells in the coral systems. They are sharing mining technology and water purification methods. Our intelligence division believes they are planning a coordinated attack on our supply lines. Zara's blood went cold. Her empire depended on those supply lines. Crystal energy from the Vec worlds powered her fleets. Water and food from the Nrim systems fed her armies. If both species attacked simultaneously. There's more, Your Majesty, General Cax continued. The Goral bird people have been serving as messengers between the different rebel groups. They are using their natural flying abilities to carry information through space in ways our monitoring systems cannot detect. How many rebel groups are now coordinating? At least 5 different species across 7 star systems, Your Majesty. They call themselves the Liberation Alliance. Tom spoke up quietly from behind her. Your Majesty, this is what I was trying to explain. They've found their common ground. Zara turned to stare at the human. 6 weeks ago, her empire had been stable, if troubled. Now she was facing the largest coordinated rebellion in galactic history. The timing seemed too convenient to be coincidence. Human, she said slowly, you arrived on my world 6 weeks ago. These rebel coordinations began approximately 6 weeks ago. Are you going to tell me that's an accident? Tom met her gaze steadily. No, Your Majesty. It's not an accident. Guards, Zara commanded, arrest this human. Take him back to the detention center. Wait, Tom said. Your Majesty, you asked me to explain the rebel coordination. I've told you what I observed, but I haven't told you the most important part. Zara held up her hand, stopping the guards. You have 30 seconds. I'm not the one who taught your rebels to coordinate, Your Majesty. They learned it from watching your own palace staff. What do you mean? For 6 weeks, I've been having conversations with your workers. Guards, technicians, cooks, cleaners, administrators. I asked them about their home worlds, their families, their dreams. But I didn't just ask one species. I asked all of them, and I let them overhear each other's answers. Zara stared at him. You were encouraging my staff to talk to each other. I was helping them discover what they already knew but had never shared. The Vec Crystal technician who maintains your communication systems has 3 children, just like the Saurid guard who protects your treasury. The Nrim environmental specialist worries about her aging parents, just like the Goral messenger who delivers your letters. And this created the rebel coordination how? Your staff members have family and friends in the outer colonies, Your Majesty. When they realized how much they had in common with each other, they started sharing that realization with their loved ones. The rebellion isn't being coordinated by some outside force. It's being coordinated by people who learn to see each other as family instead of strangers. The throne room fell completely silent. Zara could hear her own heartbeat in her ears as she processed what the human had just told her. Her own palace staff had become the communication network that was enabling the rebellion against her. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was that Tom had made it happen simply by encouraging different species to talk to each other about their hopes and dreams. Human, she said finally, you claim you can help solve my problems. But it appears you have created them. Tom shook his head. Your Majesty, I didn't create these problems. I just helped people see that the problems already existed. The question now is what you want to do about it. What do you mean? You can try to suppress this new understanding between species, or you can learn to work with it. But you can't pretend it doesn't exist anymore. Zara looked at General Cax, whose scales were still bright with anxiety. She thought about the reports of coordinated rebellions, about the staff members who had been serving her faithfully while secretly discovering their common ground with other species. For 300 years, she had maintained order through division. Now this human had shown her that division might be the thing that was destroying her empire. General Cax, she said, leave us. I want to speak with this human alone. Your Majesty, I strongly advise against. Leave. Now. After the general and guards had departed, Zara sat back down in her crystal throne and studied Tom carefully. He had managed to fundamentally change the political dynamics of her empire in 6 weeks simply by having conversations with her staff. Whether that made him incredibly dangerous or incredibly valuable remained to be seen. Human, she said, you will explain to me exactly what you think you are doing. And then you will explain to me what you think I should do about it. And if your answers do not satisfy me, tomorrow you will face execution for treason against the crown. Tom nodded calmly. Yes, Your Majesty. I think you deserve the complete truth. Tom stood quietly in the empty throne room, feeling the weight of Queen Zara's silver gaze upon him. The twin suns had moved across the sky during their conversation, and now long shadows stretched across the polished floor between them. He had known this moment would come eventually, but that didn't make it easier to face. Your Majesty, he began, what I'm about to tell you might be difficult to believe. After watching my empire begin to crumble in 6 weeks, I am prepared to believe many things I would have dismissed before. Speak. Tom took a deep breath. Humans have a particular ability that most other species in the galaxy don't possess to the same degree. We can understand and connect with beings who are completely different from us. Zara leaned forward in her crystal throne. Explain what you mean by understand and connect. Most species develop empathy primarily for their own kind, Your Majesty. Zalari understand other Zalari. Saurid understand other Saurid. This makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. Understanding your own species helps you survive and reproduce successfully. That is logical. Continue. Humans evolved differently. We developed the ability to recognize emotions, motivations, and needs across species barriers. We can look at a Vec crystal worker and understand that their spiritual connection to stones serves the same psychological function as an Rim's connection to their spawning grounds, even though the specific behaviors are completely different. Zara stood up and began pacing, her purple robes flowing behind her. You are claiming that humans can read the minds of other species? Not read minds, Your Majesty. Read hearts. We can recognize universal emotional patterns even when they're expressed through different cultural behaviors. And you believe this ability is what allowed you to create coordination between my palace staff? I didn't create coordination, Your Majesty. I revealed connections that already existed. Your staff members had been working together for years without realizing how much they had in common. I simply helped them discover their shared experiences. Tom gestured toward the viewing window. Think about it from their perspective. The Vec technician spends his days maintaining crystal communication arrays, working alone in technical chambers. The Saurid guard stands at attention for hours, protecting doorways in isolation. The NRIM specialist analyzes water systems in sterile laboratories. They never had opportunities to learn that they all worry about the same things. But you gave them those opportunities. I asked them questions, Your Majesty. Simple questions about their families, their hopes, their challenges. And I made sure different species could hear each other's answers. Zara stopped pacing and turned to face him. What kind of questions? Questions like, what do you miss most about your home world? What do you want your children to accomplish in their lives? What makes you proud of the work you do here? What keeps you awake at night with worry? And their answers revealed similarities. More than similarities, Your Majesty. Their answers revealed that every species in your empire is motivated by the same fundamental needs. Safety for their families, respect for their contributions, hope for their future, and connection to something larger than themselves. Queen Zara walked to her viewing window and looked out at the capital city below. From this height, she could see beings from all 7 species moving through the streets, going about their daily business under her rule. Human, she said without turning around, even if what you say is true, I still don't understand how conversations in my palace created rebellions across 12 star systems. Your staff members have communication privileges, Your Majesty. They send regular messages to family and friends in the outer colonies. When they discovered their common ground with other species here in the palace, they shared that discovery with their loved ones. So the rebellion spread through personal relationships rather than political organization. Exactly. A Vec crystal worker told his brother on Kepler 7 that the Saurid guards in the palace worry about their children's education just like Vec parents do. A NRIM environmental specialist shared with her cousin that the Goral messengers dream of traveling to new worlds just like young NRIM do. Zara nodded slowly. And once they realized they shared common concerns, they began sharing resources and coordinating their resistance efforts. Yes, but Your Majesty, they're not rebelling because they hate you or want to destroy your empire. They're rebelling because they feel like their basic needs aren't being heard or respected. The result is the same, human. Rebellion threatens the stability of my rule. Tom moved closer to the throne, his voice becoming more earnest. Your Majesty, what if I told you there was a way to maintain stability while also giving your subjects what they actually need? I would say that sounds impossible. 7 different species with 7 different sets of requirements. Meeting all their needs would require constant compromise and negotiation. No empire can function that way. With respect, Your Majesty, I think you're thinking about this the wrong way. Zara turned to face him again, her silver skin showing hints of irritation. Enlighten me about the correct way to think about governing an empire. You're focused on the differences between species, but what if you focused on the similarities instead? What do you mean? Tom gestured to the throne room around them. This palace works because you've created systems that meet basic needs. Security, communication, food, shelter, meaningful work. Every species here gets those things, regardless of their biology or culture. Those are simple logistical requirements. Are they? Your Majesty, security means safety for families. Communication means staying connected to loved ones. Food means survival and health. Shelter means protection and privacy. Meaningful work means contributing to something important. These aren't just logistics. These are the exact same needs that are driving the rebellions in your outer colonies. Zara sat back down in her throne, considering his words. You're suggesting that the rebels want the same things my palace staff already receives. I'm suggesting that if you provided those basic needs consistently across all 12 star systems, you might not have any rebels at all. But different species require different approaches, human. Vex spirituality, Nrim spawning cycles, Goral migration patterns. I cannot possibly accommodate every cultural preference. Tom smiled for the first time since entering the throne room. Your Majesty, what if I showed you how to do exactly that? Before Zara could respond, the throne room doors opened and General Cax entered at a rapid pace, his scales bright orange with urgency. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but we have an emergency situation. What is it, General? The Liberation Alliance has sent a formal communication to the palace. They are requesting a meeting with you to discuss terms for ending the rebellions. Zara stood up abruptly. They want to negotiate. Rebels don't typically request negotiations unless they believe they're in a position of strength. That's what concerns our military advisors, Your Majesty. Intelligence suggests they may be planning a coordinated strike across multiple systems if you refuse to meet with them. Tom stepped forward. Your Majesty, this could be an opportunity. An opportunity for what, human? To demonstrate the approach I've been describing. Instead of meeting with them as rebels who must be defeated, what if you met with them as subjects whose needs haven't been properly addressed? General Cax's scales shifted to deep red, indicating alarm. Your Majesty, I strongly advise against any approach that legitimizes rebellion. What do you recommend, General? Military force, Your Majesty. Strike the rebel coordination centers before they can launch their planned attacks. Arrest the leadership and demonstrate the consequences of defying imperial authority. Zara looked between her general and the human, weighing their completely different approaches. One advocated for the methods that had maintained her power for 3 centuries. The other suggested something she had never tried before. Human, she said, if I were to attempt your approach, what exactly would you have me do? Meet with the Liberation Alliance representatives, but not as an emperor meeting with rebels. Meet with them as a leader trying to understand what her people need to be happy and productive. And then? Listen to what they tell you. Really listen. Don't focus on their demands or their threats. Focus on the underlying needs they're trying to meet. General Cax stepped forward. Your Majesty, this approach shows weakness. If you negotiate with rebels, others will see that rebellion is rewarded rather than punished. Tom shook his head. General, with respect, strength isn't about refusing to listen. Strength is about being confident enough in your leadership to hear criticism and use it to improve. That is not how empires function, human. Maybe that's why empires often fall apart, General. Zara held up her hand, stopping the debate. Both of you will accompany me to this meeting. General, prepare a minimal security detail. Human, you will observe the negotiations and provide guidance on this empathy approach you describe. Your Majesty, General Cax protested, allowing a prisoner to participate in imperial negotiations is unprecedented. Everything about this situation is unprecedented, General. We will try both approaches and see which one actually solves our problems. 2 hours later, Queen Zara sat in a smaller conference chamber with representatives from 5 different rebel species. The Vec representative was an elderly crystal worker named Mel who kept several small stones in his hands throughout the meeting. The Nrim representative was a young female named Ava whose skin showed the stress patterns typical of her aquatic species. 3 other delegates represented the Goral, Bex, and Thul populations. Tom sat quietly in a corner, observing the interaction while General Kak stood at attention near the door with 2 guards. Your Majesty, Mel began, we appreciate your willingness to meet with us. Speak your demands, Zara replied formally. Ava leaned forward, her aquatic features showing obvious nervousness. Your Majesty, we prefer to think of them as needs rather than demands. Explain the difference. Mel spoke up. Demands suggest we want to take something away from your empire, Your Majesty. Needs suggest we want to contribute to your empire in ways that also allow our people to thrive. Tom noticed that this framing was exactly what he had hoped for. The rebels were positioning themselves as subjects who wanted to belong, not enemies who wanted to destroy. Tell me about these needs, Zara said. Ava consulted a data tablet made from coral, a Nrim technology Zara had never seen before. The Nrim colonies need spawning cycle schedules that align with tribute collection, Your Majesty. Currently, your taxation periods conflict with our reproductive seasons, forcing us to choose between imperial loyalty and species survival. The Vec workers need spiritual accommodation in crystal mining operations, Mel added. We understand the Empire requires crystal energy, but we need time for blessing ceremonies and family memorial rituals that honor the stones we extract. A Goral representative, a bird-like being named Ray, spoke next. The Goral settlements need migration route protection, Your Majesty. Our people must travel between worlds seasonally for psychological health, but current military checkpoints make these journeys difficult and expensive. Tom watched Queen Zara's face as she listened to each species describe their needs. He could see her beginning to understand that these weren't unreasonable requests from selfish rebels. These were practical requirements for maintaining healthy populations across her empire. These needs, Zara said slowly, you believe they can be accommodated while still maintaining imperial efficiency? We believe they must be accommodated for imperial efficiency to continue, Ava replied. Unhappy populations are unproductive populations, Your Majesty. General Kak stepped forward. Your Majesty, these accommodations would require significant changes to established imperial protocols. What kind of changes, General? Flexible taxation schedules, cultural recognition policies, travel accommodation programs. Each species would essentially need customized governance approaches. Tom stood up from his corner position. Your Majesty, may I make an observation? Speak. General Kax is describing these changes as if they would make your empire weaker, but what if they actually made it stronger? How so? Think about what each species is really asking for. The Nrim want their reproductive cycles respected so they can maintain stable populations. Stable populations mean consistent productivity. The Vec want their spiritual practices respected so they can maintain psychological health. Healthy workers mean better quality output. The Goral want their migration patterns respected so they can maintain mental wellness. Healthy citizens mean loyal citizens. Zara considered this perspective. You're suggesting that meeting their needs serves imperial interests rather than undermining them. I'm suggesting that happy subjects work harder, produce more, and rebel less than unhappy subjects. Mel nodded enthusiastically. Exactly, Your Majesty. We want to be productive members of your empire. We just need to be productive in ways that don't destroy our cultural identity or biological requirements. And you believe this approach would end the rebellions across all systems? We believe it would prevent future rebellions while resolving current ones, Ava replied. Each species has similar basic needs for cultural respect and biological accommodation. Queen Zara stood up and walked around the conference table, studying each rebel representative. 3 hours earlier, she had viewed these beings as threats to be eliminated. Now she was seeing them as resources to be utilized more effectively. If I were to agree to these accommodations, she said, what assurances do I have that you would maintain Imperial loyalty? Ray, the Goro representative, spread his wing arms in a gesture of openness. Your Majesty, we propose a new kind of Imperial structure. Instead of rule through fear, rule through partnership. Explain. Each species contributes what they do best while receiving what they need most. Vec crystal mining with spiritual practices intact. Nrim water production with reproductive cycle respect. Goral communication services with migration freedom. Everyone wins. Tom nodded approvingly. The rebels had arrived at the same conclusion he had been hoping for. Cooperation based on mutual benefit rather than submission based on fear. General Cax looked deeply uncomfortable. Your Majesty, this approach represents a fundamental change in Imperial philosophy. The risks are enormous. What risks specifically, General? If other species see that rebellion leads to accommodation, we could face demands from every population in the Empire. The administrative complexity alone could paralyze Imperial function. Tom stepped forward again. General, what if the administrative complexity was worth it because it eliminated rebellion entirely? That's a theory, human. Theories don't guarantee Imperial security. You're right, General. But neither does the current approach. Your Majesty, you currently face coordinated rebellion across 5 species and 7 systems. The old methods aren't working anymore. Queen Zara returned to her seat and looked at each person in the room. Her empire stood at a crossroads. She could attempt to crush the rebellions through military force, potentially destroying the productivity of entire systems. Or she could try this human's approach of accommodation and partnership, risking administrative chaos but potentially gaining genuine loyalty. Representatives of the Liberation Alliance, she said formally, I propose a trial period. 6 months of cultural accommodation policies, flexible governance approaches, and partnership-based imperial structure. If productivity and stability improve, we continue. If they don't, we return to traditional methods. Mel, Ava, and Ray exchanged glances before nodding agreement. We accept these terms, Your Majesty, Mel said. How do we begin? Tom smiled. You begin by doing exactly what you've been doing in this meeting. You keep talking to each other, keep sharing your needs and concerns, and keep working together to find solutions that benefit everyone. And if problems arise during the trial period? General Cax asked. Then we solve them the same way, Tom replied. Through understanding, communication, and cooperation rather than force and fear. 6 months later, Queen Zara stood before the same viewing window in her throne room, watching the capital city below. But this time, what she saw filled her with genuine pride. Mixed groups of different species walked together through the streets. Collaboration between alien populations had become normal rather than suspicious. General Cax entered the throne room with the quarterly reports. Your Majesty, the trial period results have been compiled. Tell me the numbers, General. Crystal production is up 18%. Water production is up 22%. Communication efficiency is up 15%. Most significantly, rebellion activity is down 96% across all systems. Zara turned to face her general, noting that his scales showed the green coloration indicating satisfaction and success. Any problems with the new administrative systems? Fewer than anticipated, Your Majesty. The species-specific accommodation programs required initial setup time, but they run smoothly now. Each population is more self-managing when their cultural needs are respected. And military requirements? Significantly reduced, Your Majesty. Most of our security forces have been reassigned to infrastructure development and trade protection rather than rebellion suppression. Tom entered the throne room, no longer wearing prisoner clothing but simple civilian attire appropriate for his new role as Imperial Cultural Advisor. Your Majesty, he said with a respectful bow, the Interspecies Cooperation Council is ready to present their proposal for expanding the partnership model to the remaining 7 systems. Expanding? The trial was only supposed to cover the rebel systems. The other systems have requested inclusion, Your Majesty. They've observed the productivity and satisfaction improvements in the pilot programs and want similar accommodations for their populations. Queen Zara laughed, a sound that had become more common in recent months. So success has created demand for more success. It appears so, Your Majesty. She looked out at her capital city again, thinking about the changes that had transformed not just her empire but her own understanding of leadership. For 3 centuries, she had maintained order through division and control. In 6 months, she had discovered that unity and cooperation could be even more powerful. Tom, she said, you never did explain how humans developed this particular ability for cross-species understanding. Humans evolved on a world with incredible biological diversity, Your Majesty. We learned to cooperate with other species for survival. Over time, that skill transferred to cooperation with intelligent species from other worlds. And you believe this skill can be taught to other species? I believe it can be learned through practice, Your Majesty. Your own staff have become quite good at it over the past few months. General Cax nodded agreement. The interspecies communication protocols developed by the palace staff have been adopted across multiple systems, Your Majesty. It's become a standard part of Imperial administration training. Queen Zara sat down in her crystal throne one final time, looking around the chamber that had witnessed the transformation of her empire. Tomorrow, she would move to a new council chamber designed for collaborative governance rather than individual rule. Human, she said, when you were captured on Kilos 6 months ago, did you plan for any of this to happen? Tom considered the question carefully. I hoped for it, Your Majesty. Humans have a saying, the best way to make peace is to understand what everyone really wants and then help them get it together. And what did you want, Tom? What was your personal goal in all of this? I wanted to prove that cooperation works better than conflict, Your Majesty. Not just for humans, but for any intelligent species willing to try. You have succeeded in that goal. We have succeeded in that goal, Your Majesty. This transformation required the courage and wisdom of everyone in this room, and everyone across your empire who chose understanding over fear. Queen Zara stood up and walked to the viewing window one last time. Her empire was stronger, more productive, and more stable than it had ever been. But more importantly, her subjects were happy, fulfilled, and genuinely loyal rather than simply obedient. The human had been right. The power to understand and connect across differences was indeed the greatest power in the galaxy. And now that power belonged to her entire empire, creating a foundation for peace that could last for centuries to come.